This episode is brought to you by Battle Batteries, the best name in the RV and marine industry. These lithium batteries are designed and assembled in the USA, backed by a 10-year warranty. The best solution for your battery anxiety, so go check them out at battlebornbatteries.com.
Whether your adventure is on the road, on the water, or off the grid, Battleborn Batteries keep you out there longer.
Hi, everyone. This is Kenny, and I am so excited to announce that SnapPad has become a sponsor for the show. It means so much to us to have their support. I purchased SnapPads for our RV over 2 years ago, and I can honestly say if something happened to them today, I would replace them by tomorrow. They have saved my back and setup time by not needing to crawl underneath our Class A to set up blocks under our jack stands. They truly make setting up our RV a snap.
For me, they reduce vibration in the fifth wheel, took 15 minutes to install, and never come off. SnapPads also add a little something extra to the appearance of the jacks. Go check them out at rvsnappad.com.
You are listening to Beyond the Wheel, a podcast about the people and ideas that drive the RV community forward.
Hey everybody, I've been looking forward to today's guest for a long time. Denis has quite a story to tell, going back to ambitions of being a rock star, to a career as a tenured professor at a major university. Then he made the decision to leave the security of being tenured to go to business school and start one of the most popular lithium battery companies in the RV and boating industries. He has done all this and is still a young guy. He is one of the smartest people I know, and we really enjoyed talking to him. So sit back and enjoy the conversation with our friend Denis, the CEO of Dragonfly Energy, aka Battleborn Batteries.
Hey, Denis, thanks for joining us today. Could we start out by just having you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role over at Battleborn Batteries?
Sure. It's great to be here, Kenny and Sean. My name is Denis Phares, and I am the Chief Executive Officer of Dragonfly Energy, which is the main company, and Battleborn Batteries is our brand of batteries that we sell to the aftermarket.
You know, I always get that wrong. I always forget. For some reason, I always think it's actually the other way around, that Battleborn Batteries is the parent and Dragonfly is under it. I don't know why I do, but that's just the way I look at it.
It got very confusing because Battleborn Batteries took off in a way that was unexpected to Sean Nichols and I. So it's almost like Battleborn Batteries is the bigger name.
What's the story behind the Dragonfly name?
The story behind Dragonfly Energy, the name, goes back quite a ways. Back in 2011, I was still living in Los Angeles, and I had come up with the idea to make this company. And the original idea was to make a lithium-ion battery technology company, but that had a cool brand that people could relate to and have a product in the market that people could buy. And so we wanted a cool name. So I just sat around with my wife and my little boy, who was 5 years old at the time, brainstorming. And I think it was my wife who came up with the name Dragonfly Energy. I liked it for a number of reasons, because dragonflies are very efficient creatures. As it turns out, they're very energy efficient, like our batteries. And they also last a very, very long time. They've been around since well before dinosaurs were around. So, and they still exist. So I thought, well, that works.
You started a career in academia and then went into business. How long were you in academia, and what made you change to become an entrepreneur?
I could go on a long time on that question, actually, because when I was getting my PhD, I did my PhD at Caltech in environmental engineering science. I had always intended to not go into business, I'll put it that way. So then I did a postdoc, and that was at the University of Delaware in the mechanical engineering department, working on a project in chemistry. Really, I didn't know what else to do but stay in academia, because that's all I knew. In fact, my dad was a physics professor, so that was sort of very close to it was in my blood, I guess. And that was, got my first faculty job at Texas A&M back in January 2001. And it was good. It was a good job. I liked Texas A&M a lot. The problem was my wife and I, my girlfriend at the time, we didn't like living there. It was just boring. So I ended up taking a leave of absence and working at a small company, a startup company in Orange County called Glaukos. And that was my first sort of foray into business. It was someone I had known from Caltech, who was the director of R&D at this company that was making this tiny microstent that you put in the eye to treat glaucoma. And so I started doing some fluid mechanics work. The guy who hired me, the guy I knew, got fired. So I was like, well, I don't know how stable this is. So I ended up going back into academia, but I ended up not back at Texas A&M, but at USC. So I stayed in Los Angeles. And that was back in 04, 05. And I stayed there until I moved to Reno back in 2012. So total, it was about 11 years that I was a professor. I kind of backed into business again because I was doing fine as a faculty member at USC. I was in the aerospace and mechanical engineering department. And I kind of got involved in developing technology to make solar cells, dye-sensitized solar cells and fuel cells, and eventually lithium-ion batteries. And during that time, I started a couple of companies, a couple of startups while I was a professor. And I ran into a lot of difficulties in terms of intellectual property and getting the stuff that I was developed licensed out of the university and into the new companies that I and a couple of colleagues have formed. And in the end, those two companies kind of functioned a little bit under some funding, government funding, and a little bit of private funding. But it, I think, became fairly clear to me anyway that I didn't know what I was doing. And actually, it didn't end well, either professionally or personally. But I did get the bug, and I realized how impactful a business could be as compared to academia, because things happen so much faster on a much faster scale. And so there was the desire to do something that was more impactful than what I was doing in academia. And then there was also the issue that I was just so tired of the academia rat race. So I was already tenured, so I had basically accomplished what I needed to in terms of stability. But it was all about getting papers published and getting proposals funded. It just seemed like, to me, there was a lot of gamesmanship in that whole process, in the whole peer review process, in the whole funding process, where there seemed to be a lot of schmoozing involved and networking and just stuff that I was not interested at all in doing as a professor. All I wanted to do was research and teaching. But to be a successful professor, there's actually a lot more to it than that. And I think I just got tired of that to the point, well, I said, if I have to do that, if I've got a network and if I have to schmooze, I might as well do it in a way where I could make more money out of it. So that's why I ended up leaving tenure and going to business school and starting Dragonfly Energy.
You had said that you had started a couple businesses. Were any of them related to batteries at all, or lithium batteries?
Yes, one of them was related to dye-sensitized solar cells, and the other one was related to making lithium iron phosphate nanopowders, which is a cathode that is commonly used, one of the cathodes that's used in lithium-ion batteries, and it actually is the one that we use at Dragonfly Energy.
Okay.
Some of your academic research then focused on lithium technology.
Indirectly, my academic research started out in a field called aerosol mechanics, small particles that are suspended in a gas is an aerosol. And I was studying aerosols from the point of view of how they affect climate and how they affect health. They had been over the years so poorly understood, and they contributed to a very large uncertainty concerning how scientists understood climate change. Because if you just look at greenhouse gas emissions, that's easy, Carbon dioxide absorbs infrared radiation, and that's easy to calculate, and it's pretty evenly distributed around the globe. So you can easily calculate that the Earth's temperature should rise dramatically because of the carbon dioxide we put into the atmosphere. But because along with the carbon dioxide, we put out particles, aerosols scatter visible light back out to space. So there's a cooling effect there. And so the combination of the two creates an uncertainty as to the extent of the warming. And of course, we're understanding more and more that the net effect is a fairly significant warming that we're already experiencing. That's the main contribution of aerosols to climate, has to do with light scattering. They're also important in forming clouds because water nucleates on particles in the atmosphere. And they are also important in affecting human health. Particles that you breathe in from combustion sources are known to cause things like cardiopulmonary disease and cancer and other adverse health effects. And so it was a really nice field of study that, really feel like you're making an impact. And so I did a lot of stuff on designing instruments to measure the mechanical and chemical properties of aerosols. I built, for example, mass spectrometers that could collect really tiny particles, 10 nanometers, and look at the mass spectrum of a single particle. And then it got into, making test aerosols so that we can sort of test how well the equipment is working. And then from the test aerosols, I got into making devices from small particles, like, solar cells, fuel cells, and then eventually lithium-ion batteries. So I backed into lithium-ion batteries because the anode and the cathode in the battery is composed of very small particles. And so I was developing processes through my research, my academic research, to manipulate particles. And eventually it all manifested into making lithium-ion battery electrodes.
What was the draw for you to stick with the lithium batteries?
I guess the first thing I did after I decided to leave academia was to come up with a process, like I said, an aerosol process, to make lithium-ion battery electrodes in a way that was way cheaper than it was being made conventionally. So conventionally, the way these particle films are made, these electrodes are made, is that you mix the powder with a polymer binder, and then you put in a solvent to dissolve it, and it makes like a slurry. And then you paint the slurry onto your foil current collector, and then it has to go into these giant ovens. So lithium-ion battery manufacturing facilities contain these giant ovens and then vacuum dryers. And so it's kind of a messy, expensive process. And I thought, well, I could do this a lot easier at just depositing it as a dry aerosol. So the reason I stuck with it is because I really felt that I had come up with something unique that could make a significant difference in the production of lithium-ion batteries. And the reason lithium-ion batteries are so important is because energy storage is such a huge bottleneck to the incorporation of solar and wind onto the grid, because solar and wind are intermittent, and so you need storage to collect the energy and then deliver it when you need it. And the cost of solar and wind had come down so much, and yet the cost of storage was still really high, is still really high, actually. So that's kind of the limiting factor. And so I wanted to contribute to the reduction in cost of energy storage. And look, people have looked at all sorts of storage mediums like flywheels and compressed air and fuel cells and advanced capacitors. And the truth is, still, lithium-ion batteries are the only game in town. The work in lithium-ion batteries in particular is enormously important to our energy future.
Does Dragonfly Energy hold any patents for the research? And if so, do you publish anything in the research for like academic journals?
Well, to answer the last part of your question, I spent my entire career publishing in academic journals, and that was the first thing I was happy to not have to do again, anymore. So no, I don't publish anything. I don't really have a desire to publish anything.
Okay.
I remember going to a conference where this Harvard chemist was giving this keynote speech, and he said, "You can do anything in the lab, but if you don't publish, it's worthless." And I decided that I disagreed 100% with that, because you can actually deploy new technology without publishing it in a way that can be way more impactful than just writing a paper. And so it's not that I'm opposed to writing a paper, but certainly when you're doing research in a company, you have to keep your secrets. And, at some point, if you're doing something sort of on the periphery, sure, you can publish it. We've got research scientists in the company that I'm sure would like their names on papers. And yeah, I don't have any fundamental opposition to allowing publications to come out of the company, but right now that's not the focus. Patents, on the other hand, that's important. So the first thing I did back in 2011, when I started doing this work on electrode production, was I filed a patent. Dragonfly Energy owns the patents on the fundamental process, and we've developed since then a number of patents and patent applications. We patent all over the world, and we also are patenting stuff not on just the fundamental cell production technology we're developing, but also on the packs, just the retail packs that we make. We're also filing design patents on those. So we try to stay we try to stay active in terms of developing our intellectual property portfolio. And that's not just patents, it's also trade secrets. There's some things you don't want to patent everything, every little detail. So there's an amount of gamesmanship to patenting as well that can bring value to the company if you do it right.
It's expensive to patent stuff, isn't it?
Patenting is extremely expensive. It is. Yeah, I mean, I really like my patent law firm that we use, and I better because I give them a lot of money. But, often patent lawyers have PhDs themselves. They're trained in law, they're experts in the field that you're patenting in. And so their contribution can be really important concerning the success of your patents and the efficacy of having those patents. But yeah, patenting, you can file your own patents, sure, and it's cheaper that way. Not that that's cheap either. But it's not just filing the patent, you also have to maintain the patent. So there's annual fees to maintain a patent. And if you file worldwide, every single country you file it has its own application fee and then its own maintenance fee. And if you develop a large patent portfolio, I mean, oh yeah, the sky's the limit to how much you can spend to maintain to maintain good intellectual property. So
I didn't realize that there was a worldwide and not a worldwide patent. I always assumed that once something's patent, it's protected worldwide. There's an extra step that you have to take to protect it everywhere.
If you file a patent in the United States, in the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, it applies only to the United States. So if someone is making this product and selling it in another country, they are not infringing on your patent.
Wow.
And each individual country has its own process that you have to go through. And when you have a law firm, they often contract with another law firm in the other country that can do the translating and deal with, filing a patent in China is very different than filing a patent in Europe, which is different than filing a patent in the United States. So yeah, it's not trivial.
Do you guys just have the patents on the batteries? I'm pretty sure you guys do a lot of research and development within Battleborn. I know you do have a whole department, I think, for research and development. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, going back to the origin of the company, we were only, a couple of scientists in the lab. That was it. That's what we were. So we started basically with the technology. As we developed products that we could sell and went to market, the R&D department just kept plugging away and chugging along, so that is operating in a similar way that it did from day one in the garage. Only now we're not in the garage anymore.
So then your research and development department, is that set up to continue to advance the batteries, or do you guys do a little bit more than just what's going into the batteries?
We are focused on better processes to make the cells and on making better cells. So I'll leave it at that. But our goal is to make our own cells, to be able to produce cells in a cost-efficient manner here in the United States. That's a huge goal for us. We're laser focused on that, while at the same time using the processes that we develop to make even better batteries than our in existence today.
So you mentioned earlier that really the long pole in the tent for energy storage is one of them is the cost of producing these lithium batteries. What makes it so expensive?
What makes it difficult now is that there's such a high cost of entry. If you want to get into making lithium batteries, you basically need billions of dollars to make a gigafactory to get the economies of scale needed to get the costs down to where they are now. So that's one thing. There's also the cost of the materials. And so the cost of the materials will come down once we have more and once we have more mining, but that really can't happen until lithium batteries are so, heavily proliferated throughout the grid that it becomes cost effective to open new mines. So it's sort of a chicken and the egg problem now. So I think what we can do to contribute to a reduction in the manufacturing costs and into the cost of entry is to allow more cell manufacturing to occur now, which will then further drive down the cost of the materials because it will enhance the mining and production of the raw materials that go into batteries.
And then lithium is not mined in the United States, correct? So then you have to import that stuff as well.
There is, I believe, one active lithium mine in the United States located down in Silver Peak, Nevada. But that does not mean that there's no lithium in the United States.
Right.
There's a huge amount of lithium in the United States. In fact, I think the state of Nevada has more lithium brine than anywhere else except for the countries of Bolivia and Chile because of the salt flats that exist in these three locations. There's also lithium deposits in hard rock that they found. I know they found huge deposits in Wyoming, and they're finding these deposits all over the world, but it's much easier to get from brines. And I'm not an expert on lithium mining by any means, but I believe that the cost of extracting the lithium will come down over time, the same way that the cost of extracting oil has come down. It's the cost of oil. First you get the easy deposits, and then you get the harder and harder deposits. But as you get more harder deposits, then the cost of extracting the harder deposits comes down. So we saw that with basically the mass mining of any substance.
Last month, you took Sabrina and I on a tour of your facility, and we got to see how your batteries went together. And Sabrina and I were completely blown away with the quality that went into it. Can you kind of, in your own words, if I say it, it's going to sound mean to maybe, I don't even want to use the word competitors, but what's the difference between a Battleborn or Dragonfly lithium battery compared to somebody else that is marketing 12-volt lithium batteries to the RV industry?
There are very few battery companies that are actually manufacturing their battery packs here in the United States. And I believe we are the only ones that are doing that and selling it into the RV and marine industries. I think there are other companies doing it, but they're more sort of selling to the military and much more expensive type stuff. But so for us, the main difference is, we make them here. We don't just import them as is from China, which every other one of our competitors does. What that allows us to do by manufacturing in-house is, number one, we can have a very high level of scrutiny and quality control on every component, every piece of metal, every piece of plastic, every cell, every MOSFET. It's the level of quality control that we have that is unique. Plus, it's our design. It's our battery. So, we've designed it in a way that we feel suits our needs and the needs of the industry better, rather than just having, some random cookie cutter design that would come out of China, for example. The other thing that benefits us is supply chain. Since we have a very high level of control over each individual component, we can pick and choose where we get each component, right? And so we have no supply chain issues. If you're importing a battery, and this has happened, by the way, if you're importing a battery from one manufacturer and that manufacturer goes out of business, then you're kind of stuck. You got to find a whole other factory to make another battery. That has happened to at least a couple of our competitors. We're really proud of the fact that we have developed our own manufacturing processes, assembly processes. We're proud of our quality control. And we're also proud to be employing Americans to do this. I think we're unique in a lot of ways.
I was going to go back to the beginning, and you said it was basically just a couple scientists in a garage. How did the actual battery manufacturing come into existence?
I always knew early on, even back in 2011, when I was brainstorming names in LA, I wanted to sell a battery pack. And I wanted to sell a battery pack that would allow for the development of a cool brand. I was thinking at the time, battery powered guitar amps. My wife had suggested a battery powered breast pump because we had a baby and she was breastfeeding at the time. And so we was just thinking of something that would be cool that we could sell, build a brand, and fund the R&D. So that was always on my radar. I did not know how to do that until I met Sean Nichols in business school. It was his idea to go into RVs and to really pursue that market because he was already selling inverters in the RV market. So when the two of us got around to doing that, the first thing we did was basically do customer discoveries. We needed to find out if this was a viable market. And so we put up a website and we'd see what kind of searches people were doing, do our own sort of analytics, but we had to have something to sell. So we bought a pallet of 9 battery packs from China. That was our big test. And we branded them as Dragonfly Energy and we started selling them. And of the 9, 2 of them broke. So that's where we're like, you know what? This is not a safe business to be in. We need to figure out how to get a handle. If we're going to do this, we need to figure out how to get a handle on our quality. And so we basically started the process of designing a battery pack, us and a couple other engineers we were working with at the time. And we had a couple of prototypes and we put something together and spent some money on a pallet of cells and spent some money on a mold tool that started making our own injection molds. And we started assembling the batteries in basically the garage. And we ended up, welding the cells together in Sean's garage into modules. And I'd pick up the modules and bring them into my garage. And I'd, finish the process of making them into a battery pack. And that's how it was born. We started selling those.
So your intention was to sell a product to fund your research?
Yes, that was that. So coming from Caltech, I have known quite a few folks who started, developed their own technology and started their own companies and went out and got millions or tens of millions of dollars worth of venture capital funding. And what I witnessed most often was burning through that cash, being unable to hit certain milestones, and the VCs clawing back, company going under, and the company losing control of all the intellectual property. That was a path that I knew I did not want to take. And the only way that I figured that could be possible was to create a revenue stream, which means you have to sell something. You've got to have cash coming in so that you can actually do R&D on your own time. That's how research is. It's a little bit like digging and hoping you find something. And so, of course, you're scientists, and so you have intuition, and you have an idea. You've got hypotheses, and you think you know what's going to happen. But first of all, you got to prove your hypotheses, and then second of all, you got to figure out how to scale it. And so, the combination of these things usually leads to the death of a tech company. We're not going to be that company. We're going to be a tech company that sells cool products, that's got a great brand, and we're going to succeed in the end.
Your initial batteries, did they have the BMS in them already, like you guys have now, the sophisticated battery management system?
It became more and more sophisticated over time. So way back then, we found the partner that we were going to work with to help us develop the BMS that we wanted. So we kind of designed what we wanted it to do, and we have a partner who builds it for us. And we have the same partner that we had way back then. We've learned a heck of a lot since then, and we've built each other up. This is a very special relationship that we have with them and they have with us. We're very loyal to each other, and it's been a very fruitful relationship, because I'm not going to say that we hit a home run on day one. when we were building them in the garage, as we started selling them and putting them out, I would say beta testing, we ran into some snags that we ran into warranty issues here and there. And on every occasion, we were able to fix it immediately and make the changes immediately. And I think that's something that's very unique for us as well. Since we basically have an in-house BMS design system and a very reliable contract manufacturer.
And you guys also do an awful lot of testing in-house. Like when Sabrina and I were doing the tour, you were showing us that you hook the batteries up and run a series of tests, like load testing, everything. And you guys built that equipment to test your batteries. Did you do that also with quality control in mind, that you wanted to build the testing equipment yourself instead of just bringing in a random tester in?
No, I won't say that the driving force was the fact that we needed better quality testing equipment, and that's why we built it. The reason we built it is because we had no money, and we had to figure out how to automate, the testing procedures, how to automate the manufacturing, the welding. You can't sit there and weld everything by hand. It just can't be done. You can't expect to scale like that. So we started out making our automation equipment by buying crap off of eBay used and putting it together on a shoestring budget. So, we did not have a lot of money, but we wanted to make battery packs, and therefore we had to make cheap automation equipment. And, we got, over time, we managed to retire certain pieces of equipment that we'll never throw away because, they mean a lot to us. Yeah, we had stuff that it really was a hodgepodge of components. No two welders were the same. They had different components. And since then, we've managed to standardize things, and now we've gotten to the point where we might use a contractor to help us design some stuff. But yeah, we've got a lot of stuff that was designed in-house really out of necessity, because we either that sort of stuff we wanted to have in the building didn't exist, or if it did exist, there was no way we could have afforded it.
Could you tell us, Dennis, just an offhand number or off the top of your head, how many steps are there in the process from beginning to end to have a battery completed?
How many steps? Well, I could just go through the whole process with you. I mean, we bring in each piece of metal that we've designed. So we've got actually that the metals are all sourced domestically. So we've got brass, we've got copper, we've got aluminum, we've got nickel, we've got all sorts of pieces of metal that come in. So they come in and they're all basically checked and spec'd and make sure that they conform. Each cell comes in cycled and matched. Then we go through and we spot weld the cells in our automated welders into modules, either 100 amp hour or 50 amp hour or 260 amp hour modules, depending on what we're making. And then those modules get checked again, make sure that the welds, each individual weld is secure. They're checked and double checked, so they're signed off twice. Then they get put on a rack, and they are then mounted into our home-built cycling units. So what we do then is we allow the cells to, and these are modules, so they're multiple cells, to drain to empty. So we define empty at 2.2 volts, and we define full at 3.6 volts. So we drain it to empty, and then we raise it to full. And every single module goes through this cycle all at the same time. And that allows us to, number one, ensure that each module is at full charge when we assemble it. And number two, we can measure to the nearest milliamp hour what is the actual capacity of these modules. Then what we do is we sort them so that when you build, for example, a 100 amp hour nominal pack, the modules inside it are ranged between like 108.12 amp hours to 108.14 amp hours. So each module is very closely matched with its neighboring modules in the pack. While this is happening, each BMS that comes in from our contract manufacturer is tested for all of its voltage and thermal limits. So that's all done also with another piece of equipment that was designed in-house. And we've got multiple, BMSs that we use. So we've got multiple types of testers. And every single one of those is tested for each function, and the results are always logged, and the serial number logged. And then the BMS and the modules go into the assembly step, which is a pretty manual step where things are soldered and bolted and shimmed and packaged together. And then before the lid is put on, we run one final test on the battery where we do all of the load testing. So the way we designed our batteries, and this was, very early on we were doing this, we had a limit for continuous current, another limit for 30 second cutoff, another limit for a half a second cutoff, and then we've got a short circuit cutoff. And so we test all of these functions of the BMS, and finally, the last step is to glue it and dry it and sticker it and package it. There you go. That's how, now you can go make your own.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Now we're all set. Secrets are ours. But it's a very detailed process then. This is nothing like just slapping stuff together and sending it out. And I was so impressed when we did that tour. I love that tour that you gave us. If other people wanted to take that tour, is anybody allowed to do the tour?
We've given a lot of tours over the years. Customers would come by, but we've stopped doing that because it just got to the point where there were too many tours, and we've scaled to the point where every second of our day is allotted to something, and we've got multiple shifts running now. So we've got a pretty squeaky clean operation, and so we just can't accommodate tours the way we used to. We will, if we've got an ambassador or influencer or someone who wants to come in and film, we will accommodate that. Of course, you and Sabrina came by, and did we film that? I don't even remember.
I didn't know we were allowed to film. Otherwise, I would have.
Okay, I'm sorry. We've had a few. That come in and filmed. I know that the Mortons on the Move came in and filmed themselves making a battery. That was at our old facility. At our new facility, we've had Adventurous Waves. Matt and Diana come out and do a really nice job filming a tour there. And I think we've had a couple others maybe. But I would say at this point now, if you intend on coming in and visiting, you will likely no longer get a tour.
Okay.
So now I need to go way back, and we forgot to ask the obvious question here is, why should people consider lithium over the traditional lead acid chemistry in a battery?
Well, that is the comparison that basically built our business. This is the thing that Sean Nichols and I have been evangelizing for years now. And it goes way back to when Sean suggested, hey, we should really target the RV business. Why should we target the RV business? Because people freaking hate their lead acid batteries. They hate their lead acid batteries because they're heavy, they're toxic, they're corrosive, they're unreliable. If you screw up and drain them too much, then you could ruin them, and you got to replace them, frequently. So lithium has benefits over lead acid on all of these points. Now I'm going to start out with the obvious cost. Everyone's like, I can't afford a $900 battery. I'm like, okay, well, you can afford to replace your $400, $500 lead acid system, every other year or more. Well, over the lifetime of your batteries, your lithium batteries are about 20% the cost. So it's an investment now. You want to tell me that it's more expensive? Fine. Yeah, you pay a premium of about double, but it lasts so long that it will pay off very quickly. So that's just the cost. There's also other benefits. They're so lightweight. They're 1/5 the weight, so they're easy to put in and take out and manipulate if you want. Reliability, you just don't have to worry about them. Just put them in and you're done. You don't have to maintain them. If you drain them till empty, till when the BMS clicks off, they're totally fine. You could do that every time if you want. They charge so much faster. You could charge them up in 2 hours instead of 5 to 10 hours. So, for people that put them in, their lives are changed. And I'm sure the two of you can attest to this. We've got thousands and thousands of people that can attest to that. And The people that haven't gone that route yet, they say, well, I think it's crazy to spend that much. Batteries should be cheaper. Well, the batteries are what they cost now. There's no, it's basically market price for what we do to the batteries. It's the highest quality with the best warranty and the highest level of service. It's actually a really good price for the battery, and you will be so happy that you made the change.
One thing I was hoping to talk about are the environmental effects of lithium over lead acid. I think they're much more environmentally friendly, correct?
Well, just look at the life cycle of the battery. And by life cycle, I mean also when they're at the end of life. Lead acid batteries have to be recycled. They have to be recycled. The reason they have to be recycled is because they have a lot of lead in them and they have acid in them. So you can say, yes, most lead acid batteries are recycled. 99.9% of lead acid batteries are recycled in the United States, right? And if you're not in the United States, if you're in India, for example, lead contamination and pollution from batteries is doing a lot of health, creating a lot of health problems, especially for children. So yeah, environmentally speaking, lithium-ion batteries are much friendlier, but I do have to have a caveat here, which is that most conventional lithium-ion batteries have cobalt in them, which is also a toxic heavy metal. So you can't just throw away the battery that's in your phone, that's in your laptop, or that's in your Tesla, because it has cobalt in it. Lithium iron phosphate, however, is non-toxic, so it could actually be safely landfilled. And in fact, at this point, there's just not that much at the end of life. But if your only option was to landfill it, you could safely landfill.
Dennis, what about the people that say that the lithium batteries don't work well in cold weather? I know Sabrina and I, we don't have our Battleborn batteries in a sealed compartment. Ours are just under the stairwell. They're in the open air, I guess you could say. And we've been traveling in under freezing temperatures and we've never had an issue. But what do you say about it?
What I say about it is there is no issue. Do lithium-ion batteries perform worse in cold temperatures than they do at room temperature? Yes, they do. How much worse? Well, we've done all the testing on this. If you are at freezing, you might get 90 amp hours out of it. If you are at 15 degrees Fahrenheit, you might get 80 amp hours out of it. If you're at 0 degrees Fahrenheit, you might get 70 amp hours out of it. So yeah, you get less capacity out of it when you're discharging. Now, charging, you don't want to charge a lithium-ion battery when it's very cold because you run the risk of lithium plating. The extent of lithium plating depends on the cells. I can only speak about our cells. So we have a 25-degree Fahrenheit cutoff. We've done testing to the limits of our batteries at the highest allowable charging rates. And we can safely say that you can go all the way down to our cutoff and you will not degrade your battery. And I can't say that about other brands because we've got a specific type of cylindrical cell. We don't have prismatic cells. I think ours can handle low temperatures a lot better than a lot of other ones. But anyway, we have a cutoff. If you go colder than that, your battery will not allow you to charge. So it's not something that you have to worry about, but it could be a hindrance for you. Also, I will say that we've already solved the problem because we have heating solutions. If you and Sabrina actually had issues where you're always that cold and you're driving somewhere and you show up, the batteries aren't charged and you're annoyed by that, you could always put a heater on the batteries that we could provide for you. And we've also developed a battery with an internal heating solution that we're going to be releasing shortly. Having said that, when you charge your battery up and it's like, let's say 15 degrees, and you try to get current out of that battery, as I said, you'll get about 80 amp hours out of the battery. What do you think you'll get out of your lead acid battery? Even if the lithium battery can't charge, you'll still get more power out of it, even if you're able to charge up your lead acid battery.
Your batteries currently are running off of the 12-volt systems, but now it seems to be more popular to be running 24, 48 volts in some of these van setups. Is that something that Battleborn batteries would be looking at as well?
You can already do that. I mean, we sell a 24-volt battery, but we've already told you you can connect them in series up to 48 volts, and that's something that is done. There are some batteries you can't connect in series. Some folks are like, why can't I connect this battery in series? That doesn't make any sense. I can connect any battery in series. Yeah, you can connect two 12-volt batteries in series, but for lithium-ion battery, you've got to have the BMS be able to handle that higher voltage. So the MOSFETs on the BMS have to be able to function appropriately at 48 volts or above. And I can tell you for ours, our limit is way above that, but we don't want people doing more than 48 volts for other, liability reasons. But some MOSFETs can only do 12 volts, so they can't be connected in series. Our batteries, you can safely connect in series up to 48 volts. That is done so commonly for us, especially for off-grid stationary storage applications. It's just more efficient to use a 48 volt system. But you can do that with our 24 volt batteries or our 12 volt batteries.
Okay.
Now I have to ask you, you've used a word a few times that I don't know what it is, MOSFET.
That's sort of an important component of an internal BMS, and it's basically just a solid state switch. A FET is a field effect transistor, and a MOSFET is specifically one that uses a metal oxide. That is basically the switch that will either allow current or not allow current out of the battery.
So you set up this company, developed a product to be able to fund your research. Has everything gone to plan? Or did the products grow faster than you thought they would? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, has the company gone to plan? I would say, surprisingly, it has gone exactly to plan. We came up with a whole strategy to do this, which included a marketing plan and a financial plan and projections. And, when you make these financial projections, it's just like, yeah, whatever, here it is, we're going to make this much money at the end of 5 years, and we did. We actually executed on a plan. And I look back at what we were able to accomplish, and it still blows my mind.
What do you attribute to that success? Why did it go to plan? Like, what do you think happened to make it all work?
I think a lot of the success is between Sean and I. We cover a lot of bases. I tend to have the technical stuff covered and the financial stuff covered. And Sean tends to have the marketing stuff covered and the people stuff covered. And together we work on strategy. And I guess part of the reason why I am surprised is because we are so different. Sean and I are so different that early on, we honestly couldn't stand each other. We fought all the time. We disagreed on everything. And I would say through those early years, the company could have imploded and almost did at any moment. What happened over the years, and it was a very, very painful experience, and Sean will agree with me, is that we slowly learned how to tolerate each other, and then how to accept each other, and then finally how to work together. And the closer we became, especially in our working relationship, the more success I think that we enjoyed. But it was unpleasant. It really was. I think the hardest thing about starting a company is dealing with people. And we start out with dealing with, the original founders and the original management team, and then dealing with employees and learning to deal with customers and dealing with suppliers and everything. It's all people. It takes a lot of different types of people to make it work, Hell, when you get the Democrat working with the Republican, then the sky's the limit. That's when you can change the world.
And you guys met in school? Is that where did you meet in business school? Is that where the first time you guys even met each other?
Yeah, the first time we met was, so when I moved up here from LA, and the first thing I did was enroll in this executive MBA program at the University of Nevada. For me, I already had a PhD. I had been a professor. It was almost like an afterthought for me, like, I'm going to go and, figure out how to run a business because I don't know what the heck else to do, right? And but anyway, yeah, that's where we met. So we were introduced by a classmate of ours. This guy told Sean, oh, here's another guy in our program who's starting a battery company. And he came and told me, oh, here's a guy in our program who runs an inverter company. You guys should maybe work together. So we all sort of got together and did school projects together, business projects together. I ended up tutoring Sean on statistics and accounting and financial management. And Sean ended up tutoring me on marketing and social media. At the time, I had already started Dragonfly Energy, actually. It was basically just me in my garage working on the intellectual property. And that's when Sean suggested RVs, and he was sort of showing me how to do customer discoveries and how to do SEO analytics, search engine optimization analytics and stuff. And I was like, hey, you want to join the company? So that's how it started. And Sean, he was like, yes, and never turned back for a second.
So you guys made it through those rough times because you both knew that you needed each other to be successful.
I don't even think we knew that we needed each other to be successful. That's where the strife came, was just like, Sean, I'm sure Sean was just like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. How can I possibly be in a business with this guy? And I'm thinking, geez, this is how I can't come to work and fight about every little thing, And, I think early on, we basically stayed together. We basically continued to work together because there wasn't really an alternative, I guess. It's like, what are we going to do? I guess we would just not do anything. So I'm like, all right, well, let's keep doing this for a while. And it wasn't until later, when as we sold more and more batteries and our products became better and better, that we realized reluctantly that we needed each other.
So what do you enjoy most about the work you're doing at Battleborn Batteries or Dragonfly Energy?
I really love everything about it. I mean, I love the fact that we're running our own business. Just that freedom is just incredible. Few people have that opportunity, and I just feel so fortunate that I have that opportunity. We've got a bunch of people that are so dedicated to the mission. They work together so well, and I love our customers. From the early adopters to the ones that we get now, these are folks that they're taking a chance, they're spending a lot of money, and they're putting a lot of trust in us. And so I enjoy the interactions with our customers, whether it's just sort of a sales call or a technical support call, or just an inquiry. I really love meeting people like you two, all of the YouTube personalities and the bloggers and the influencers that we've met. This is a side of life I knew nothing about. Hell, I've never been RVing. I mean, I don't know the first thing about RVing. And then I start meeting these people that not only make it a living, but make it a living to talk about it and teach people about the joys of being out on the road and being off grid and everything. I've loved the opportunity to meet all of these people that I wouldn't have. I mean, before I met a lot of professors. I'm kind of done with that.
I'll be the bad guy. What's the least thing that you enjoy about being CEO of the company and working with Dragonfly?
The least thing is every freaking week there's a disaster. There's a curveball. There's just something. Geez, let's see what I can kind of divulge. I don't want to divulge everything here, but just as one example. Oh, guess what? There's a new tariff that just came in. So this boat that just came in, yeah, well, we're going to take a couple $100,000 out of your bank account because of a decision on tariffs that was made yesterday. It's like, oh my gosh, okay. And then we're selling too much. We can't sell so much. We're going to run out of product. Oh, wait a minute. I bought too much. I bought too much inventory. We don't have any cash anymore. We don't have any cash. How are we going to pay people? And so it's just like every day, it's just like a balance between the growth and keeping the inventory. And there's nothing that we haven't overcome, because although we've come close, as I said, we stuck to the projections. The projections turned out right. We were able to accommodate, the sales growth that we've experienced without running out of cash. That's something that a lot of people don't realize is, if you're a growing company, you need a lot of cash. If you grow too fast, you run out of cash and you're out of business because you grew too fast. So, I think it's the stress is the everyday stress is what I don't like. I look forward to where there is no stress, it's hard on me. It's hard on my family. It's given both Sean and I a lot of gray hairs.
I think you just answered probably my next question. From your perspective as the CEO, what has been the most difficult part of running a rapidly growing business?
Cash flow, managing cash flow. And I have to say, we have a extremely good relationship with our partners, with our suppliers. I would say we've got close friendships with certain people that we work with in China. These are people that we care about, that care about us. When the pandemic hit here, they're just like so worried. They're sending us masks, for free. I think that there's good in all humanity, and the opportunity to meet and interact with people both on the upstream and downstream side has been heartwarming, and so I feel lucky for what we've been able to do, and a lot of that is because of the people that we've been able to meet.
What would you say is the ultimate goal for the company now, Dennis? What would you like to see the company do next? Is it, make the batteries as environmentally friendly as possible? Is it drive the price of the technology down, or just something completely different?
I want to revolutionize the energy business. I want to go public, and I want to make renewable energy available for everybody.
You said you were working on solar cells when you were in, was it Caltech, where you were working on solar cells?
No, I was a professor at USC at the time.
Oh, USC. And have you had any desire to delve back into that process at all, to kind of partner with your existing battery technology?
In terms of R&D, no. There's no reason to, because the cost of solar has come down so far, and silicon solar cells are abundant, and I don't think we need any other type of panel. I am interested in solar, though, in general, and I will tell you, here's a little tidbit for you on our podcast. We are about to launch Battleborn Solar, so we are going to have a complete solution that involves solar panels as well.
Oh, okay.
So will those panels also be built in-house, just like you guys do everything else?
I'm not going to say anything about that yet. And actually, okay. I'm gonna ask Sean if that's even okay to talk about.
That's fair enough.
I do have one more question for you, Dennis. You started with just you and Sean basically assembling these batteries between your garages. How big is your staff now?
Well, to be fair, it was me and Sean and another engineer, another early partner in the company who ended up leaving. That process, how we welded and assembled the batteries, has remained largely unchanged to where we, to the way that we're doing it now. The company now has around 55 employees. That encompasses the entire sales, management, administration, marketing, and engineers, R&D, and production staff. But I remember assembling 4 batteries, filling a box with foam, and packaging up the box and driving it to the UPS store and shipping it to customers myself. Seems like a lifetime ago now, but it wasn't that long ago. We're talking 5 years ago.
And was there, when you hired your first couple employees, did that increase your fear or your stress level of needing to be successful?
I wouldn't say that it increased my fear or stress level just because we had employees. I think I was excited. This is where Sean really was instrumental, because he had hiring people and managing people at his previous company. And so he really took the lead on hiring and HR and managing people. So I really did leave a lot of that to Sean. We had fights early on about how to manage people, because I would say I was used to managing graduate students. That was one of the fights that we had. But yeah, to answer your question, no, that part didn't stress me out at all. I was just happy to grow and get help.
I think what I'm learning here is that the secret to success is to have a good partner. Not even necessarily need to get along with them, but just have a good partnership with somebody.
Well, like I said, people is the most important thing. And a lot of times when you do get investors and they're investing in a company, they're investing in the people that comprise the company, not in the company, not necessarily in the technology. You could have the best technology in the world, but if you don't have the people to execute on the plan, then you're screwed.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I think that's all of our questions for you, Dennis. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. We know you're very busy. Do you have anything that we might have missed or that we didn't talk about that you want to talk about?
I think that probably the one thing that I missed in this whole story is the love and support that I got from my family at home, from my wife, from my children, from the sacrifices they made. I left academia in 2012, and I didn't make a salary again until 2016.
Wow.
I'm eternally grateful to the love and support of my wife, Tanya, and of course, my children as well.
Yeah, I think that's probably a very important piece of this whole formation of a company is if your family didn't support you, it would have been a huge, probably would have been impossible.
Right. I mean, how could I leave tenure to go back to school if, someone wasn't feeding me?
On that note, I guess we'll end. Thank you so much, Dennis. This was great. I think you've given us a lot of insight into the company that we wouldn't have otherwise had.
I'm really thrilled that I was able to be on your show. So thank you.
We want to thank Dennis for coming on the show. I found it interesting to hear that Dragonfly Energy is more than just a lithium battery company, and how the company was originally created to fund their R&D department. I enjoyed hearing how and why Dennis made the transition from academics to more of an entrepreneurial role. I also appreciated to hear Dennis tackle the issue of how their lithium batteries can handle the cold weather and the step-by-step process that goes into building every one of their batteries. We both enjoyed learning about how Dennis and Sean Nichols met and worked through their differences to create such a strong company and product. If you would like to hear more about Battleborn Batteries, check out episode number 3 with Sean Nichols. That wraps up this episode, and we will be back in 2 weeks. This episode is brought to you by Battleborn Batteries, the best name in the RV and marine industry. These lithium batteries are designed and assembled in the USA, backed by a 10-year warranty. The best solution for your battery anxiety. So go check them out at battlebornbatteries.com.
Whether your adventure is on the road, on the water, or off the grid, Battleborn Batteries keep you out there longer.